Alexia Beckford. You're watching CBX, your region, your business, your source. I'm Alexia Beckford. You're watching CBX, your region, your business, your source.
The time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News.
The Business News headlines is brought to you by QMX Wealth Management, making more possible.
Economic gains inch forward, diplomatic sparks fly, and Europe hits the brakes on rate cuts. Hello and welcome to CBX Business News for Thursday, July 3, 2025. I'm Neil Wood. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the newscast, locally, Jamaica's economy grew by just over 1% in the first quarter of 2025 when compared to the same period last year. On the regional front, Trinidad and Tobago's energy minister hits back at the St. Vincent Prime Minister's monopoly money comment, defending the energy sector as vital to the country's foreign exchange stability. And over on the global stage, the European Central Bank signals a pause following 8 straight rate cuts as global trade uncertainty clouds its path forward. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories right after the break. The time by Carrie Chris is 6 p.m. Time for CBX Business News.
The Business News headlines is brought to you by QMX Wealth Management, making more possible.
Economic gains inch forward, diplomatic sparks fly, and Europe hits the brakes on rate cuts. Hello and welcome to CBX Business News for Thursday, July 3, 2025. I'm Neil Wood. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in...
Introducing the Corporate Services Unit, your go-to experts for corporate secretary.
It's feeling so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It's feeling so good right now. Feeling so good right now. Yeah, yeah. It's feeling so good right now. Don't never ever ever wanna calm down. Oh no, no. Yeah, yeah.
If it were not for the Jamaica Stock Exchange listing, Phosphate Company Limited would not be where it's at today. I called them, they listened to my concerns and my fears, and they gave me the answers. All the fears I had about banks, about losing control, you are having them. And I tell you, they were dissipated when I spoke to the Jamaica Stock Exchange. This is one of the best decisions I have ever made in business. If you want to change the trajectory of your business and to grow, make that call today to the Jamaica Stock Exchange. You will be glad you did.
Serious about building Jamaica? Build with solid PVC pipes and conduits, manufactured in Jamaica by Phosphate, made to the highest standard. Solid PVC pipes and conduits are made in Jamaica by Jamaicans for Jamaicans. Available at hardware stores across the island. Take some solid advice, support our economy and build well. Buy solid PVC pipes. for solid brand PVC pipes and conduits. Call our distributors or Fosrich at 876-937-5099.
You may have fears in listing on the main market or the junior market of the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Whatever those fears are, we can help you to allay them. Give us a call today. Our friendly professional staff will help you through the process. Let us have that conversation. Give us that call.
How may I assist you today?
I want to open an account for me and my son.
That's great. Let me see your documents. I understand you want to know about our savings account. Let me show you a few accounts and the benefits of each account.
Why do you need so many documents from my mommy?
It's called KYC, Know Your Customer. This helps us to protect you and treat you right. Thanks for the documents. Take a look at this brochure. Let's discuss savings accounts. A savings account is an interest-bearing deposit account. Customers with savings deposit accounts are covered up to $1.2 million per ban, so you don't have anything to worry about.
This financial literacy tip is brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, promoting financial inclusion. For more information, visit our BOJ Real Talk playlist on our YouTube channel.
FESCO started from 5 shareholders who believed that they could execute a fuel company as good as or as better than any multinational. The director shareholders always believe that the dealers within our network should be owners of the company. They believe that staff should be owners of the company. And specifically, also believe that the public should become shareholders. That cannot be facilitated by a bank loan. Our experience so far has translated into additional customers. Our transparency has allowed us to access credit easier and at better rates. So if you're a private company thinking about growing your profits, having better access to capital, I really think you should consider listing on the junior or the main market. Go ahead, have that conversation as soon as possible. We did it and we're very happy.
Me grew up and see my granny save her money under her mattress.
Exactly.
Okay.
Your grandmother house never burned down?
No, how you reached that, so? That was a one-off thing.
That could have happened to anybody. That's why you must put your money in a financial institution and protect it.
What if the bank crash?
Well, that's where JDIC comes in.
What you mean?
JDIC is a financial safety net which provides coverage for your money in case your financial institution fails.
Explain that to me.
Alright, because of the JDIC deposit insurance scheme, once you put your money into a financial institution like a bank or building society, you can get coverage of up to a maximum of $1.2 million per deposit of your financial institution if it should fail. And for even more information, you can visit their new website at www.jdic.org, and you can follow the social media platforms for the latest information.
JDIC, protecting deposits for you and me.
The local news is brought to you by Darriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean flavors and fragrances, tease the senses, and Pulse Investments. Welcome back to CBX Business News. We begin with the latest news from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica. Jamaica's economy grew by just over 1% in the first quarter of 2025 when compared to the corresponding period last year. Acting Director General of the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, Leisha Delati-Bader, shared the update during this morning's virtual economics media stakeholders meeting.
So for the first quarter of 2025, we are showing a 1.1% increase in the GDP compared to the first quarter of 2024. And this was reflected in a 2% increase in the goods producing industry, as well as a 0.8% increase in the services industry.
She noted that within the services industries, all but 2 industries recorded declines during the review period.
We're seeing where most of the services industries recorded an increase. However, there were 2 of the services industries that recorded a decline, particularly real estate and business services, with a decline of minus 0.4%, and wholesale and retail trade, repair of motor vehicles, installation and machinery equipment, with a decline of 0.8%. On the goods producing industries, they all recorded an increase, with agriculture, forestry, and fishing increasing by 3.1%, mining and quarrying by 0.7%, manufacturing by 1.7%, as well as construction by 1.4%.
Ms. Delati Bader also explained that the latest gross domestic product GDP results were compiled using the internationally recommended 2008 System of National Accounts SNA as part of Statin's ongoing revision of the Jamaica System of National Accounts JSNA.
The 2008 SNA, developed jointly by 5 leading international organizations, that's the United Nations, the IMF, the World Bank, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and Eurostat, offers a more comprehensive, consistent, and flexible framework for measuring economic activity in today's globalized and rapidly evolving economy. This transition has been a significant undertaking. It involved extensive staff training, upgrades to our data systems, and close collaboration with our data providers. I want to emphasize that this adoption is a technical initiative, and it is grounded in international best practices and aligned with Statin's mandate under the Statistics Act, which and also the UN Fundamental Principles of Official Statistics, which state that methods must be based on purely scientific principles.
According to the Acting Director General, the adoption of the 2008 SNA has resulted in an upward revision of the country's GDP.
As is common with the implementation of updated national accounting frameworks globally, the application of the 2008 SNA has resulted in an upward revision of Jamaica's gross domestic product, which my colleague Olata Wallace will discuss a little bit later. This revision reflects a more complete measurement of economic activity. Beyond its technical nature, this adoption represents a strategic enhancement to Jamaica's economic measurement tools. It will provide policymakers, researchers, and businesses, as well as the public, with a clearer, more detailed, and internationally comparable view of the economy, supporting more informed decision-making and long-term development planning.
Acting Director General of Statin, Leisha Delati Bader. The Bank of Jamaica's Financial Policy Committee, FPC, reports that despite recent developments in the United States' immigration and trade policies, highlighted by ongoing trade wars and reciprocal actions from its major trading partners, global economic uncertainties have intensified. These tensions have contributed to a decline in the U.S. gross domestic product for the March 2025 quarter and have led to downward revisions in growth forecasts. Nevertheless, Jamaica's domestic macro-financial conditions remained broadly stable during the March 2025 quarter, showing resilience relative to the previous 2 quarters. This performance, the FPC says, was reflected in real GDP growth, a moderation in inflation, and relatively stable financial market conditions. The bank's composite measures of financial stability remained well below the established financial crisis thresholds, indicating the continued health of the financial system. Other indicators of financial stability, including capitalization, liquidity, and asset quality measures, remained broadly stable and above prudential benchmarks. However, the profitability of the sector continued to fall, reflecting generally higher operating expenses and slower income growth. The FPC indicated that the trajectory for global and domestic macrofinancial conditions remains uncertain in the context of the ongoing trade war and other policy actions. A prolonged trade war could put upward pressure on domestic inflation, which may in turn necessitate more restrictive monetary policy, drive volatility in financial markets, and dampen output growth. The implications of these developments for the financial system include negative changes in asset prices and further reductions in profitability. Meanwhile, the Bank of Jamaica says that the financial sector supervisors will continue ongoing monitoring and risk assessment. Where necessary, they will determine the most appropriate policy responses to minimize risks and promote stability within Jamaica's financial system, especially given the challenges posed by the current global economic climate. A statement from the bank's Financial Policy Committee on Tuesday indicated that the bank will conduct detailed assessments of the implications of its planned programs of reforms for the sector and, where necessary, will adjust the pace of implementation of these reforms. The key policy initiatives that are being considered for the implementation in the short to medium term include joint efforts by BOJ and the Financial Services Commission (FSC) to transition to the Twin Peaks model of supervision, advancement of legislation for a special resolution regime which will establish an approach to resolution in which non-viable financial institutions deemed systematically important are resolved, and the implementation of the Basel III framework, which includes the establishment of a systematic risk buffer intended to address the inherent risks that systematically important financial institutions pose to the financial system. Now to trading news from the Jamaica Stock Exchange. 106 stocks traded on the JSE Thursday, of which 39 advanced, 49 declined, and 18 traded firm. Leading the winners were Mayberry Jamaican Equities, Caribbean Cream, Jamaica Public Service Company 7%, and Express Catering, while the losers were led by MPC Caribbean Clean Energy, US dollar, Salada Foods, Jamaica Limited, Productive Business Solutions 10.5%, Perpetual Cumulative Redeemable Jamaican Dollar Preference Share, and MPC Caribbean Clean Energy. Now the main index declined by 838.31 points, or 0.27%, to close at 310,853.13. The junior market index, however, advanced by 14.16, or 0.41%, to close at 3,445.77. And it's time for Market Education Feature, brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standard. In today's Market Education Feature, we'll be defining the term obligor. An obligor, also referred to as a debtor, is an individual or entity that has legal or contractual duty to deliver a benefit or make a payment to another party. In finance, the term typically describes a bond issuer responsible for fulfilling obligations such as repaying the principal and making interest payments on the debt. The party entitled to receive the benefit or payment is known as the obligee. The Market Education Feature was brought to you by CariCris, Regional Ratings, Global Standards. And that's it for Market Education Feature and the end of the local segment. Please stay with us. The regional business news is up next. The local news is brought to you by Derriman Trading, better from the start. Development Bank of Jamaica, facilitating economic growth and development. Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances, tease the senses. And Pulse Investments. regional business news. Trinidad and Tobago's Energy Minister Rudal Munilal has delivered a blistering response to recent remarks made by the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who likened the country's foreign exchange, forex, to monopoly money, calling the comments misguided and dismissive of the country's energy-driven economic revival. Addressing a high-level audience at the 2025 Mature Basin Energy Symposium hosted by the Society of Petroleum Engineers SPE on Wednesday, the minister directly confronted the controversial statement, asserting that Trinidad and Tobago's forex challenges stem from past policy failures and mismanagement, not the current government's handling of the economy.
Energy sector will continue to be the main contributor of wealth for the nation, as well as a source of much needed foreign exchange. Sadly, I recently took note of a statement made by the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where he made comments on Trinidad and Tobago's forex situation and indeed compared our money to monopoly money. Maybe the Prime Minister should have shared his wisdom with his colleagues who were responsible for the collapse of our economy and the shortage of foreign exchange.
The minister's rebuttal did more than just push back on Vincentian Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves' comments. He also pointed to $3 billion in exploration investments and renewed interest in the country's deep water acreage.
And as a petroleum economy, we are entering a new phase of our evolution after 117 years of commercial petroleum production. The low-hanging fruits have been exploited. Notwithstanding, Trinidad and Tobago has been recognized and is indeed a prolific hydrocarbon basin. Our deeper horizons on land and in shallow water, as well as our deep water province, has been largely unexplored. We have just metaphorically scratched the surface.
Trinidad and Tobago's Minister of Energy, Rudal Munilal. And as the diplomatic tug-of-war continues to simmer between Trinidad and Tobago and St. Vincent and the Grenadines over energy policy, trade imbalances, and foreign exchange constraints which exposed fractures within the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, CSME, Vincentian Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves has moved to clarify his position. At the heart of the dispute is a broader concern over payment delays in regional trade, especially for farmers in the OECS exporting to larger markets like TNT. Speaking on Wednesday during an appearance on the state-owned NBC radio, Gonsalves reiterated the need for the Twin Island nation to establish mechanisms that guarantee prompt payment for agricultural exporters from smaller member states.
So I'm not putting my mouth in the internal politics. But we have some problems which we have to solve. We can't have CARICOM unequally yoked. Otherwise, the CSME will falter. That doesn't mean you have to do the crazy thing as suggested by Chastany, to pull out a CARICOM completely. Because there are other aspects, coordination of security, coordination of foreign policy, and tremendous functional cooperation.
Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. Royal Caribbean Group extended its market rally on Wednesday, with shares climbing 3.49% to close at $326.10, a new 52-week high. The cruise operator's stock has now posted gains for 10 consecutive trading sessions, reflecting growing investor confidence in the company's performance and the broader recovery of the travel sector. The stock broke past its previous high of $318, set just 2 days earlier on July 1. Trading volume reached 2.9 million shares, well above the 50-day average of 2.3 million, signaling heightened market interest. The surge came on a day of mixed performance for U.S. equities. The S&P 500 index rose 0.4% to 6,227.42, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 0.02% to 44,484.42. Among competitors, Carnival Corporation rose 3.5% to $29.65, while Walt Disney Company dipped 0.41% to $122.98, highlighting varied sentiment across the leisure and entertainment sector. Meanwhile, the Board of Directors of Royal Caribbean Group has declared a quarterly dividend of 75 cents per common share. The dividend will be payable on July 3 to shareholders on record as of close of business on June 4, 2025. Now to trading news from the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. 21 securities traded on the TTSE Thursday, of which 4 advanced, 7 declined, and 10 traded firm. Today's winners were Massey Holdings, Scotiabank TNT, Prestige Holdings, and Unilever Caribbean, while leading the losers were Ansa Macau, Trinidad and Tobago NGL, First Citizens Group Financial Holdings, and National Flour Mills. Other results of the day include the All TNT Index declining by 4.99 to close at 1,484.69. The Composite Index declining by 2.79 to close at 1,016.50. And the Cross-Listed Index also declined, but by 0.06 to close at 72.17. And still at 91.81 is the SME Index. And we take a short break, but please do stay with us. The international news segment with Nielsen Rose is up next.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. In the international news today, Canada's trade deficit narrowed to 5.9 billion Canadian dollars in May, moving from 7.6 billion in April, as exports rose 1.1% to 60.8 billion, and imports declined 1.6% to 66.7 billion. The improvement was driven by Ottawa's reciprocal tariffs and delays linked to the CARM system, with notable export gains in metal and non-metallic mineral products up 15.1% and consumer goods 2.6%. Imports of metals and vehicle fell sharply, while trade with the U.S. dipped slightly. In contrast, the U.S. trade deficit widened to 71.5 billion, moving from 60.3, as exports dropped 4% to 279 billion, led by declines in gold, natural gas, and metal products, while imports edged down 0.1% to 350.5 billion. The U.S. saw its largest trade gap with the EU at 22.5 billion, and deficits with Mexico, Canada, and Vietnam also grew. However, the shortfall with China narrowed significantly to 14 billion. The European Central Bank delivered its 8th straight interest rate cut in June, aiming to anchor inflation expectations and avoid unnecessary tightening of financial conditions, according to minutes from the June 3 to 5 meeting. Policymakers cited ongoing global uncertainty and persistent trade tensions as key risks, emphasizing the need for flexibility and refraining from firm forward guidance. with inflation now expected to dip below the ECB's 2% target later this year, driven by a strong euro, falling energy prices, and cheaper Chinese imports, a pause in rate cuts is increasingly likely in July. Most officials favor waiting for clearer economic data and developments in global trade before making further moves. Markets now anticipate just one more cut in 2025, with a potential shift toward tightening projected for late 2026. U.S. non-farm payrolls rose by 147,000 in June, surpassing expectations of 110,000 and slightly above the revised 144,000 gain in May. The figure aligns with the 12-month average of 146,000, signaling continued labor market resilience. Government hiring led the gains, adding 73,000 jobs, primarily in state government education, 40,000, and local education, 23,000. However, federal employment declined by 7,000, extending a downward trend since January. The healthcare sector added 39,000 jobs, with notable increases in hospitals up 16,000 and nursing and residential care facilities up 14,000. Social assistance employment also rose, but by 19,000. While the report highlights ongoing strengths in the labor market, economists caution that hiring may slow in the coming months amid growing uncertainty around tariffs and trade negotiations, as well as immigration policy. The UK faced renewed market turbulence this week after Finance Minister Rachel Reeves was seen in tears during a House of Commons session, sparking speculation about her future. Prime Minister Keir Starmer appeared unaware of her visible distress, which the government later attributed to a personal matter. However, rumors of a possible resignation or dismissal unsettled investors, prompting a sharp reaction in financial markets. Bond yields spiked amid fears that a change in leadership could weaken fiscal discipline. The situation stabilized somewhat after Starmer publicly reaffirmed his support for Reeves, stating she would remain Chancellor for many years to come. The UK 10-year gilt yield fell 6 basis points to 4.559% on Thursday, partially reversing the previous day's 16 basis points surge. The British pound, however, remained under pressure against both the euro and the US dollar. Adding to the uncertainty, Bank of England policymaker Alan Taylor called for a faster pace of interest rate cuts, warning of rising risks of a hard economic landing. Governor Andrew Bailey echoed a dovish tone, noting that inflation is being driven more by regulated prices than demand, and that early signs of economic and labor market weaknesses are emerging. While markets expect a 25 basis points cut in September, the BOE remains more cautious than its global peers. And those were your international business stories. After the break, join Neil for your recap.
To open a savings account for my son John. I really want him to start saving and managing his own money.
And I need for Safe to visit my father in New York.
Okay, based on what you said and our risk assessment, he will qualify for simplified customer due diligence requirements. I'll need your ID, proof of income, TRN, and John's ID as well.
Okay, here you go.
Opening an account is easier than you think using Simplified Customer Due Diligence Requirements, also called CDD.
Welcome back, and now to recap our top stories. In the local news, Jamaica's economy grew by just over 1% in the first quarter of 2025. Regionally, TNT's energy minister hits back at Vincentian Prime Minister's monopoly money comment. And internationally, ECB signals pause after 8 consecutive rate cut amid global trade uncertainty. Those were the stories making today's CBX Evening News. On behalf of Nielsen Rose and the entire production team, I'm Yanil Wood, wishing for you a wonderful evening, and thanks for watching CBX, your region, your business, your soul.